Hi there. My name is Vince Ritchie, and these are my Harvard Business School tips for 2015 graduating class. So if you're watching this video, it's probably because you're planning to apply to Harvard Business School, perhaps in 2012 to start in 2013, or you may be just getting a jump start thinking about applying to Harvard Business School years from now. Anyway, welcome. My name again is Vince, and I run an admissions consulting company. I'm an admissions advisor. My website is vinceprep.com. Undergraduate, I studied at Stanford. I studied history, which is what I taught. After Stanford, I became a full-time teacher and worked at a school and also ran a nonprofit educational program down in New Orleans. I'm from California originally. That doesn't really matter, but anyway. And then graduate school, years later, I went to NYU and got my master's in design for education. So I've been doing things in the education space my entire professional career. And finally, I'm just going to plug my organization that I'm a member of, which is AGAC, the Association of International Graduate Admissions Counselors. That's what we do. That's what I do. So I'm a member of that organization since 2007. All right. How do I know about Harvard? Why am I talking about Harvard today? I have a lot of clients who've gotten in there over the years, and so I decided to make a video where I outline the tips and the methods that those clients have been using over the years to get in. I enjoy sharing information. Again, I'm an educator at heart. One of the things I really love about education field is that there's not a lot of ideas are shared openly in a school. Teachers aren't, at least in those days, I think it's still true, jealously trying to protect all of their intellectual property. There's debate, there's discussion, there's competition. Teachers are trying to be effective. And in a good school, in a good learning environment, there's a lot of, again, friendly competition and trying to be effective and reach students and reach an audience. I also like teaching because it has a bit of performance aspect to it, and I'll talk about how that performance training that I have is useful in the admissions process for my clients. But let's get back to my Harvard results. So I went independent in 2007. I've been working independently as a counselor now for 5 years. Since I went independent, there's been 10 clients that I've helped comprehensively. That includes the admissions strategy questions, the admissions materials that they have to produce, and leading up to the interview. 10 people total. There's been a lot more than that, at least a couple every year, where I help them with interview training only. And I don't count those as results because I didn't start with them through the strategy stage, so I don't count it as my comprehensive result. 15 total in 10 years, 10 total in the last 5 years. So I guess my results are pretty good as a one-man show. I don't have staff. I don't have other counselors. I don't outsource my work. I do everything myself. I work with all the clients who contact me with me. So those are my results, and I think they're decent. And I want to share with you today, because people often ask me, what's the secret? How does it work? How do you help clients get into Harvard Business School? So let's talk about that. That's why we're here. First of all, the short answer to that, and this is a bit vague, and I will explain in detail at the end of this video if you're interested, but the super short answer to how I help my clients get into Harvard Business School is I do the same thing that I've been doing since 1990. I've only been an admissions counselor since 2002, independent since 2007, but really since 1990, since before I graduated from university, I've been teaching two things. Those two things are critical thinking and storytelling. Again, I'll talk a lot more about those at the end of this video. I don't think that's so interesting to you right now. You want to talk about Harvard, and that's great, and I do too. Essentially, another way to answer the question, how do I help people, beyond critical thinking and storytelling, which I realize those concepts are pretty vague and somewhat subjective. Everyone has their own definition. Um, I'll be a little more concrete. Using critical thinking and storytelling, I help my clients understand the intersection of three things. I try not to use the word things, it's very vague, but three categories, three subject areas, okay? Or visually, imagine, if you will, three columns, okay? Column one is the criteria of the school. The school says, Harvard says, we want all of the applicants whom we admit to have these three qualities. I'll talk about those in a few minutes. That's what the school says they want, right? They try to be transparent. What does it take to get into Harvard Business School? Well, they tell you these three criteria, okay? That's their stated criteria, and that's important, and you should be looking at those. For every school you apply to, that stuff you kind of think, meh. You're looking at the ranking, right? You're checking the ranking, you're checking the stats, you're talking about friends you know who got in. I'm as good as her, I'm better than her, I'm better than him, I can get in if they got in. Right, there's that one-upsmanship, that friendly competition. And I do think that's healthy in this whole process. But go beyond that stuff. Nothing wrong with all that stuff. But go to what the schools actually say they're looking for. Look at this stuff. They spend a lot of time writing it, and a lot of thought goes into it. And you can get some clues from it that are going to help you get in. It's a practical exercise, looking and studying their criteria. That's one thing I do for my clients, with my clients. The second thing that I do, this is the main thing that I do, is I look at the contents that my clients are sending, right? The contents includes the application data forms, the short answers that are really important. I'll talk about those. The content includes the required essays, which is mostly what most of you probably watching this video are concerned about. And there's nothing wrong with being worried or wondering about the essays. If you learn one thing from this video, it's this. I hope that you will learn, that you'll take away from this video as a payback from me. Thank you for your time. Here's my gift to you. My gift to you is don't just think about the essays. This process is so much more than essays. And it sounds weird because I'm thought of as an essay counselor, but I hope I'm more than that. I try every day to be more than just an essay counselor. Nothing wrong with essays, folks, but admissions officers, and we know because we talk to them and they tell us, please, you as a counselor, don't be so worried about the essay, and please tell your clients to not be so worried about the essay. And nobody listens. And this is huge industry that sprung up of people like me who will edit your essay for you, and it happens. And I'm a writer, right? If I write stuff, I sometimes pay people to edit my stuff. That's cool. And New York Times has editors and writers, so there's nothing wrong with the editing process. That process is an ethical process in the production of material, but the problem here is that you're not trying to get published, you're trying to get into Harvard Business School. So again, I do some editing, but I only do it when it's absolutely necessary, and I really try to resist because your authentic voice really matters most to the school. I'll say that again. Your authentic voice is what matters most to business school admissions officers, including Harvard. Your authentic voice. There is so little authenticity in this process now. That's why Harvard, I believe, cut 50% of the essays. That and the fact that they're tired of reading. It's expensive. It's a human resource issue as well, and it's an organization. That's a nice way to cut costs or minimize the need to hire more people or whatever, or just work that hard. If they can make a judgment call based on the same on 800 words of required essays, right, versus 1,600 words of required essays, if they feel qualified to judge your application with half the number of essays and half the words, more power to them, and more power to you because you have to write fewer essays. But it's not going to get easier to get into Harvard. It's probably going to get harder to get into Harvard statistically, because if things go as Harvard hopes, a lot more of you will apply because it's easier to apply. Doesn't mean it's easier to get in. So again, let me just say my point about the contents, and this is my core value. Critical thinking and storytelling is how I help people, and the way you can help yourself is by whatever counselors you use or no counselors that you use, friends, family, mentors, advisors like me, whomever you're using, send essays that you will be proud of. 20 years from now, when your kid, 30 years from now, maybe, I don't know, whatever, when your child says, hey dad, hey mom, you went to Harvard Business School, didn't you? Yes, son, daughter, I did. I want to do that. Great. Do you still have your old application? Yeah, I probably do somewhere. Can I read your essay? You got to think about that. You got to say, yeah, but you know what? You can read my essay and then we'll talk about it. And I want to be involved and I want to read your essay and I want to help you present yourself authentically because those essays that I wrote captured me at that time of my life. Anyway, I'm not going to go forward with this moment of I have a kid, that's why I think about this stuff. And so if your kid just stumbles upon a file folder on your computer and reads your essay when he's 10 or she's 10 that you applied your Harvard Business School essays, you should be proud of them. I kind of didn't write those. Wouldn't that be sad, Write your own essays in your own voice. Work with people like me if you want to. I will only, and other AGAC members will only ever encourage you to be yourself in this process. All right, that's my speech, and I'm sorry for going off on that, but it matters, I think. The final thing here is culture. Can you contribute to the academic, student, and alumni communities of the school? Can you contribute? So, I help you look at 3 columns of information: criteria, contents, and culture. Yeah? I help you find the intersection between the criteria that the schools say they want, the contents that you send, and the day-to-day life of the school as a student in the class, outside the class, in clubs and activities, student events, and alumni. I have a pretty good sense of the culture of these schools because I've been doing this for 10 years and I stay in touch with a lot of my clients and I visit them at the schools. So I have a sense of the culture of all these programs, the subtle differences between them that you won't necessarily find in the numbers, what's behind the numbers. I have a sense of that culture. You probably have lots of friends at these schools. I hope you do. You should be finding out the culture of these schools. And I help people figure out within these 3 columns, how can you stand out? Because these are just facts. Everybody, this stuff just exists with or without you. How do you rise above all this and be a standout applicant? That's why you're here today. Let's talk about it. Harvard's 3 criteria are on their website. I'm going to quickly tell you what I think they mean. Criteria 1 is a habit of leadership. You can show leadership in your application contents and in your materials. It's a huge part of the Harvard culture. The way to show it is what I'll be talking about in this video. It's not the way you think. It's not always so obvious. I think the school gets really tired of the obvious essay about, I'm so great. The chest beating stuff is boring. If you're great, if you're so great, you don't have to say you are. Right? I mean, unless you're Muhammad Ali, who I totally respect, that's different. That's showmanship, right? That's entertainment. That's pop culture entertainment. Muhammad Ali, much respect to Muhammad Ali, I am the greatest, all that stuff, but that's a different gig. That's a different culture. That's a soundbite where the sports shows him on the screen for 2 seconds saying that before or after the fight, jumping around in the ring. That doesn't work in an essay, okay? Anyway, we'll talk about the essays and leadership a lot. All right, capacity for intellectual growth. This starts to get at both the numbers it requires to get in, the numerical demonstrations of intelligence, as well as the intellectual growth that Harvard expects from you. I was going to say that Harvard pushes on you, and I think that's too mean of a verb. But, one thing you've got to understand about the Harvard culture is that it's quite uniform. There's not a lot of flexibility. Dean Noria is from MIT. He's trying to bring a little bit of that MIT flexibility into the school, and I imagine, I sense, and I hear that he's getting lots of resistance. And nobody likes change. Okay? Nobody, no organization. We as humans resist it, and organizations resist it, especially when there are people with vested power. The case method is how Harvard pays its bills. They don't make money. Imagine this. This is correct and true and unbelievable that you, the student, if you get in and go, paying your own money or loans or a combination or a grant or a scholarship, if you're really lucky, go for that. A bunch of somebody's money goes to Harvard and it doesn't pay their bills. What pays their bills, what makes up the difference on what they lose on tuition, because the human capital costs are very high. It's not the building. The buildings, the land was, they've owned that land for 400 years. It's not NYU. They're not buying buildings. They don't need money to build new buildings or buy new land. Harvard just needs money to pay the faculty. And there's a talent war, just like there is between, any two top companies in the world. Just like there's talent wars between Google and Apple or whatever, two companies, Facebook and so whatever. In your industry, there's talent war for the best people. In finance, totally, right? Talent wars for professors too. Talent wars are expensive. It takes a lot of money to keep those talent wars. I hate to keep using that word, but there's a fight to get and keep the very best and brightest people because it affects ranking and it affects your experience as a student at the school. It affects everything. So, capacity for intellectual growth. Again, I keep going off on tangents because I get it. Pardon my excitement. I get excited about this stuff. Intellectual growth. Can you do the work and enjoy the process? Your undergraduate GPA, it's not just the number. Sometimes 3.2 is better than 3.7 if you took really, really hard classes at a school where 3.2 in your major is considered good. And Harvard knows that for really top schools globally. They know that. Right? 2.6 at Harvard is going to be really, really hard to even get invited to interview. Significantly below a 3.0 on considering on a U.S. scale, unless you're from a school where that is the average, and they'll have to find that out, right? C is supposed to mean average in the old days. There's grade inflation. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that either. Let's talk about GMAT and TOEFL. 15 years ago, before I started doing this work, Harvard tried to get rid of the GMAT. It didn't work. It was a big experiment, and they're back with GMAT, and every school's with GMAT. And I think some of them sit around, and if they could get rid of it, they would. I think in some ways. I don't necessarily think the schools like GMAT. And you're sitting there saying, well, then why do I have to take it? Well, I'm not going to go into that either. But for Harvard, you can get in with a 650 sometimes, once in a while. I mean, all these top schools do take somebody that doesn't have a 730 or 710 or 20, whatever their average is. They do sometimes take a person who doesn't have the highest score, but there's got to be something else that proves your academic ability. It's going to be the undergraduate performance, the classes you took and how you did. It could be if TOEFL is required, you might have a very, very high TOEFL score. And then they might at least want to interview you and see for themselves if they think, based on the work that you're doing, and again, what you studied, if you're ready for their very intense learning environment. So, last thing is about the TOEFL, and that's on my website. If a lot of you watching this maybe don't have to take TOEFL, and I apologize if you do have to take TOEFL and I'm speaking too quickly. I apologize for that. Again, I get excited. I am from California. All my life, people have thought I was from New York and it's just this Italian thing. I get excited, and when I get excited, like all of us, I speak quickly. I will try to slow down. All right, engaged community citizenship. I think this is somewhat obvious, but engaged, right? Are you going to be involved at Harvard? Are you a good citizen of your community now? And do they think, therefore, will you be a good citizen of their community in a year or when you enter? Right? And therefore, by extension, will you be a good citizen in your communities when you graduate, your job, where you work, your neighborhood, your whatever organizations you're a member of? Are you someone who gets involved um, in an engaging way? Can you contribute? Is another way to phrase this one. Okay. Another part of engaged community citizenship, a community and culture, has to do with this word fit. Let me give a quick example, partly so I can brag and show off a little bit, and more, hopefully, also to prove exactly what I mean by fit, using myself as an example. You can barely see, I think, back there, my Stanford diploma, which I put on the wall at my office here when I meet clients face to face, just to prove to them that, it's like going to a doctor's office. Not that that gives me the skills I have to do this work, but anyway, that's my diploma. I got into Harvard undergrad. That could have been a Harvard diploma behind my head. But I knew I wanted to study history. I knew I wanted to become a teacher. At that young age, for whatever reason, I kind of had that in my mind. That's what I was going to do. And so I thought, I want to study history. I got into a bunch of schools that had great history departments. Yale, which I was this close to going to. Harvard, which is so hard to say no to. Princeton. I got into all those kinds of schools, and they had great history departments, as they should. And Stanford, I felt, was up and coming. And the year I graduated, nothing to do with me, but the year I graduated, coincidentally, the history department did get, the first time, I think, in a while, #1 in the whatever, U.S. News maybe rankings. And I don't like rankings in some ways. They are a necessary evil. They are a necessary tool. But they exist. And we noticed there was some buzz around the history department. Hey, we got #1 in U.S. News. It doesn't really matter, but hey, cool. And it felt good. And I just had that feeling. It was just an instinct. I wanted to be at a program that was hungry to achieve new things, whereas I felt those East Coast schools were really proud, for great reasons, of all that they had achieved in the field of history. That was fine. I was 18. That's the choice I made, and I'm proud of the choice I made. I'm glad I went to school where I went to school, and I chose what I chose based on fit. I didn't use that word. I'd never heard that term back when I was 18, but that's what I was doing, whatever it was called back then. I was going with my instinct, with what I knew I wanted and where I felt I would be happy. And then again, years later, when it was time for graduate school, that urge that was in me, and I think in a lot of West Coast folks like me, whose parents or grandparents immigrated maybe from the East Coast, right? This is a common story. It happened in the U.S. 100 some years ago. Some folks left wherever they're from. In my case, Germany and the UK, Ireland, we think, we're not so sure, maybe Scotland, left there, and then the other half, most of them, I'm half Italian and Italian American, anyway, they all left Europe anyway. You know the story. Ellis Island, that kind of thing, East Coast, stayed there for a generation or two, maybe only one generation, and then, hey, there's this place called California, there's all this opportunity out west, pack your 7 kids in a tiny car and drive across the country, kind of thing. Or the rest of my family was in Iowa, in a small farm town in Iowa. Same thing. California, hey, opportunity jobs, let's go out there. But we hear these stories about back east. We talk about back east, so I thought I should go to the East Coast. But I didn't go for undergrad. I thought, okay, here's my second chance, grad school. So I applied again to Harvard. I applied that time to Columbia, because Columbia was strong in the field I wanted to study in education and design and media. I didn't go to any of those schools, even though I got into the Ivies. I went to NYU because I wanted to make stuff. I didn't want to talk about theory. I've been a teacher. I wanted to learn some educational theory. I'd never studied cognitive science per se, but I taught, and I felt confident as a teacher. I had gotten some awards, and I felt confident. I'm sure I wasn't the greatest teacher in the world, but I thought I did a good job. I did it for 5 years, and I wanted to learn how to make video and web and learn the theory of education and immediately apply it. I didn't want to apply it years later. I wanted to apply it now. I wanted to get production skill. It was a very expensive way to get production skill, looking back on it, but I got a lot more than production skill. I got all kinds of great things that we all go to graduate school for. So my point here is fit. Twice I said no to Harvard because it didn't fit me. And that's a weird choice, probably, some people would say. But that's what I did, and I did it for reasons, and I felt good about the choices I made. All right, what kind of contents are going to gain you admission? I'm gonna hide my bald head now, and I'm gonna go to a different page here, and let me turn this around a little bit. Pardon me as you watch me manipulate my OS. All right, this is a column. This is a multi-column thing that I made, and it's got 5 schools on it. These 5 schools are Columbia, Harvard, Wharton, and Stanford. I picked these because of this chart. Don't get a headache here as I bounce around. These are the 5 schools I'm talking about in these videos, the first videos that I'm making, because they have the fewest percent admitted, right? Stanford only takes 13, and they have the highest yield. Harvard has the highest yield of all, 90% last year. But this number should tell you something. This is part of the reason Harvard wants more people to apply. Almost double Stanford's rate. Harvard's jealous, I think. Harvard wants to have a 7 or 6 or 5% admit rate if they could. The only way to do that is to get lots more people to apply. Part of the reason I think that the essays are now cut significantly. That, and I think the time it takes to read all the essays. Anyway, these are the 5 schools. This chart, by the way, this data, a lot of this is from Poets and Quants. Much respect to John. I think his blog is great. And I updated some of this data because Harvard has released some new numbers. So this is his graph that I modified and updated, but I just want to give him credit for that. All right, so this is a chart that I've made that's going to be the thing that we're going to be looking at off and on throughout the rest of this video. And I'm not sophisticated enough to hide Columbia, which was the first video that I've made so far in this series. So you're going to see Harvard and Columbia next to each other, and that's simply just because I'm kind of lame with this stuff. You'd think I'd be better. I got a master's degree in it. I can't hide Columbia, so you're going to see Harvard next to it. That's the honest reason. The other, actually, it is kind of nice, though, because you can compare them side by side if you plan to apply to both of them. So both schools require application data forms, the short answer stuff. That's including, and in addition to what you're going to upload as a resume, they require lots of short answers. Those things are important. So register and take a look and see for yourself all the stuff that they ask for. This is some stuff that they ask for that I'm going to talk about because I think it is particularly important. So look down here. Columbia has a YMBA essay. It's short answer and essay 1A. Why do you want an MBA? Harvard, in 2004, had an essay, and previous years had an essay like Columbia that said, why do you want an MBA? It's now become 500 characters. So 400 words to 500 characters. 500 characters is about 100 words. 100 words. So 100 words or less about your goal. And this question, when you log into your Harvard account, which you should set up, even if you don't apply this year, it doesn't cost anything and it doesn't hurt your future chances. Just because you enrolled once doesn't mean anything. That you registered once. Just register. Take a look. If you think there's any chance you might apply, please go ahead and register. The schools don't care. They don't even notice. This stuff is outsourced. So I don't think they're really checking all the login IDs and all this stuff. They don't care. Get started and see for yourself what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that when you log in, they ask your future goal, what do you want to do in the future, before they ask what you've been doing so far. Does that make sense? I'll show you. I took some screenshots of the application. This is this is inside the page of the employment section. At the very top, you have to do these drop-down things. What's your intended post-MBA industry? That's this column here. That's this one where if you can see my little pointers going around on it. Intended post-MBA over here. And then on the other side, intended post-MBA function. So what industry and what function. Now, you might be staying in your current industry. I'm in the education field, so I would click, well, this is if I wanted to stay in education. My current one, which is down here below, I'd say education below, and then I'd come back up here, or anyway, education, I'm going to stay in education, but my function is going to change. I'm going to move into general management. Right now, I'm education consultant. Yeah? Here, I'm education consulting function. In the future, I want to be education general management, right? I'm going to run a huge education company in the future. I'm not, that's not my plan, but if I were, and if that was my goal, if I was trying to use my Harvard MBA to advance my current career, right, which is advance my pre-MBA career, if I was trying to do a vertical move, that's how I would use those boxes. But if I was trying to do a lateral move, if I was trying to change my industry, this is the future one, by the way, up here. So I would choose the other industry that I want to join. And then down below, which I'm not showing you, in your current job, you'd pick your current industry. So I pick education down here. And let's say I was trying to become let's say I was trying to go into the government. Okay, again, I'm not, but good luck if I were. But if I were trying to go into the government, I'd say government. I want to be a secretary of education, or I want to run in the education department, or I want to run a school board, or I want to run I want to be on the government side. I want to be a public service employee in the education field. So, but I'm actually changing industry. So I'd check government, and then I would check whatever function I wanted. Does that make sense? So you're either trying to advance. Sorry, that's me again. Let me go back here. Either you're trying to advance your current career, or you're trying to change your industry. All right? So this is what Harvard asks. You pick from these drop-down menus. Yes? Pick your future industry you want to go into. Pick your future function that you want to have. Then, in 100 words, 500 characters, I keep saying 100 words. It's not 100 words. It's 500 characters. But we can't think in characters, most of us. So it's more or less 100 words, but really not. It's characters. Anyway, in 500 characters, why do you need an MBA? Why are you pursuing an MBA to support your choices above? Why MBA? I'll tell you what a bad answer is, and I hear this way too much, is the bad answer for why MBA is, well, first of all, it's whatever the schools say, like you're just copying exactly what they say. I need an MBA to learn the general management perspectives to blah, 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 blah. It's got to be specific to your particular goals. Another bad answer is what I call the food court, or I also call the cruise ship, which is like travel the world and taste exotic food and meet exotic people. I want to get out of, I want to change my background, I want to change my perspective, I want to meet a whole lot of new people, and it's just this very superficial social stuff. That could be your deep objective and desire, but they hate that. Don't have any sense of that in your explanation. Instead, talk about the actual, so I've got these examples down here. I need to expose myself to various viewpoints. That's weird. First of all, expose myself sounds sort of dirty. And I need to learn better yet, and various viewpoints is just so vague as to be meaningless. Better, I need to learn to motivate system engineers and sales managers so we can make my new venture, or maybe our new venture is less selfish, we can make our new venture successful. So in theory, I started a new venture, or I'm going to start one while I'm at Harvard or right after I graduate. This is an aggressive goal, by the way, but if this is my goal, I've never done that before, and I know from talking to people who have that you got to have good sales team, and you've got to have good system engineers, right? The coders, the people that make the tech, if it's a tech venture. And I want to motivate them. That's a much more, it's another way to say general management, but it's a much more specific way that you're not going to read it in everyone's essay because it's very customized to that applicant's goal, which that's just a made-up sentence, but that's an example. Okay, company information, also in the application data form, look at this green stuff that I highlighted. They ask you to write 200 characters about your responsibilities, about your key accomplishments, which requires some thought. Key, you've got to identify in only 200 characters. You have to pick and choose. And most significant challenge. Now, I'll talk about the essays soon, but key accomplishments could very easily overlap with your essay one, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is something you did well. That should be, probably, maybe, if you're talking about work. If you're talking about work, that will be actually one of your key accomplishments in this 200 character answer. Similarly, although not necessarily, your most significant challenge might be the essay. So these are not mutually exclusive, is what I'm trying to say. Essay 1 could be part of this 200 character answer. Essay 2 could be part of this most significant challenge. And if what you did well or what you wish you had done better came from this particular time in your professional career, then it should be part of this answer. Does that make sense? So people do ask me, is it waste of space to repeat myself? No, it's not a waste of space to repeat yourself, because it's true. The thing that you're proudest of, if that's what you did well, if that happened to be something from work, from this job or another job that you're listing, it would be weird not to include it in here if it's from the same period of time. Don't be too clever. Just answer the questions is what I'm trying to say. But be aware that these questions are asked and plan for them, and don't be surprised and don't fill this in the night before you submit your stuff, and don't be surprised when you see these requests for information. Plan ahead and make this be part of your strategy. All right, for the essays. Essay 1, something you did well. Now, this could be an accomplishment. This might be an accomplishment which is usually an individual achievement. An accomplishment could be climbing a mountain. You know, I have asthma, but I've always wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and I did. Okay? And that's my personal accomplishment, and it felt great, and it's the story I want to tell. I'm not saying it's a good story or a bad story. I'm just saying that could be a story for someone's Harvard Essay 1. Or it could very well be a leadership story, which has to involve other people. Now, some clever people say, I led myself up Mount Kilimanjaro even though I have asthma. Meh, I don't like that. Me, leadership is a group story. It just should be. Leadership is always with other people. There's better words to talk about driving yourself or overcoming fear or leading oneself. I think is bizarre as a phrase. It's confusing. I led a team. I led a group towards a common goal. So a leadership story involves other people. An accomplishment story might not involve other people. That's my definition of these words, and these are just my words, and they're not Harvard's words, so maybe they don't matter. But I will use this word, leadership or accomplishment, and I just wanted to tell you what I think it means. Most importantly, and I think this is the best piece of advice that I could possibly give you about this goals essay, about this accomplishment essay, essay 1, tell us about something that you did well, right? This circle right here. I'll just give a quick example. My main point here is that this leadership essay has to make the goal believable, or it should make the goal believable. And I don't literally mean write about your goal in essay 1. Do not do that. That's repetitive and boring. I mean logically, the story that you tell about something you did well should show that you have... Let me put myself back on the screen, because this is a kind of a complicated logic, and I think it might help some of you if you can watch me explain it. All right. let's say I'm applying to Harvard Business School. I'm not. Let's say I am. Let's say I run a pizza restaurant. This is actually, my grandparents ran a pizza restaurant. Okay? Let's say I run the family pizza restaurant that I inherited from my father, who inherited it from his father and mother. I run this pizza restaurant. We're doing great. We're dominating our local market. I have a big family. I have 27 cousins. We all live in the same town, and I got a lot of mouths to feed. Right? I need to sell more pizza, and I'm getting older a little bit. I mean, I'm applying to Harvard, so I'm 26, but I'm gonna inherit the family business, and I want to involve my younger cousins early. I want to hook them early. I want to get them involved so they don't run off to Harvard Business School and join McKinsey. I want to keep them in the family business. How do I keep them involved? I have brainstorming sessions. I listen to them. They're humans. We're family. We talk every Sunday night around the dinner table, eating our big meal, and I want to get their ideas. At the big dinner table is not the time to talk about this because the old people want to talk, and we need to listen to them and show respect to them. But we go out for a play pool, or we have a soda or whatever. We talk, and they tell me their ideas, and they have some great ideas. So I find a way to bring in some of their ideas into the business and give them a piece of it, and their ideas take off. And I don't know what their ideas are. A gluten-free pizza using rice flour if we're in LA market and people are health conscious and they don't want to eat wheat. Or using special ingredients if there's a big ethnic community. There's a bunch of people of a certain there's a certain group that loves pizza with certain stuff on it. I live in Japan. Japanese people put mayonnaise on the pizza. So if there was a huge Japanese community right near us, we'd put some mayonnaise on the pizza. We'd have our Tokyo pie and expand ourselves that way. And my younger cousin knew that because he went to Japan and ate this pizza and he liked it. Whatever. This is my stupid story. I don't want to keep going on with this stupid example. That story would support my goal. Why? Because you understand that I'm a good listener. I got my cousins to tell me their cool idea, and I'm a good motivator. I brought them into the business and let them have a piece of the business. If their idea was successful, I let them keep some of the profit to keep them involved and to keep the younger generation into this 3-generation pizzeria. My goal is to go nationwide with the Ricci or the Vinny's Pizzeria or the Ricci's Pizzeria. We're going to go nationwide. We're going to beat Pizza Hut, we're going to kill Domino's, we're going to beat them all, we're going to be the number one market share. I better get a Harvard MBA. Why? Well, motivating my cousin or listening to my cousins or implementing a new idea, those are all great things. I like innovation, I take smart risks, I involve other people. That's not nearly enough to beat the big boys, the Pizza Hut. They're I think, they have money, they have corporate owners, they're part of this massive food industry, and we're going up against them, and I better get a Harvard MBA because I don't know strategy, I don't know funding, finance, specific stuff I don't really know marketing, I only know my own little local marketing stuff, I don't know long-term marketing strategies, I don't know metrics or analytics, I can't really read spreadsheets quickly and intelligently, I can't see through the numbers. And what if we sell the business someday? That could be a possibility if there's no one to take it over and the family decides we sell out to Pizza Hut and the price is right and everybody agrees and everybody's on board. How would I read the contract, right? How would I deal with what's the value of our intellectual, all this stuff? How could I have confidence talking to the iBankers and lawyers and the consultants and all the other people involved in this buyout if there was going to be a buyout, if that's part of the plan B or something, or the long-term plan of the company. Anyway, that was my stupid 5-minute example, but my point is, your goal is big. It's either big, vertical, I'm going to move up my current industry, or lateral, I'm going to jump over and change my industry. Whatever it is, it better be a pretty big and ambitious goal, realistic, supported by two things. What you've done so far in your career, which is in the application data form, and it's in the essays, and also supported by this essay, essay 1, because it shows you've got, first of all, I know pizza, so Harvard's not going to teach me about the food industry. I'm good at what I do. Our food is good. I can run a decent small business, or I'm involved in a profitable small business. So, and you like my story about the rice, because you can't eat wheat. You're the coincidentally or whatever, you like my story. You like the way I told it. So I hooked you emotionally in my story, and I showed you that I have some of the core skills I need, some of the appetite for risk and the go-go attitude and the listening skills and the motivating humans kind of stuff that I can't quite learn. I'm not going to learn that from zero at Harvard. I better have that foundation. I know my stuff. I know my basic industry. And I need this MBA because there's a big gap between what I've done so far and what I'm trying to do is really different, and there's a big jump. And I need Harvard to really help me get there. That's what I mean. It's very simplistic, but that's the kind of way that a leadership story in Essay 1 or an accomplishment story in Essay 1 could support your goals. So as you brainstorm your answer, think about the following list of things. Think about times that you made something better through turnaround. Think about times when you started something new. Think about times when you went beyond expectations that other people had of you. That's an essay question that MIT and Stanford use often. What's a time when you convinced others to support your idea? That's MIT's question this year. These are all behavioral questions that you'll see that these schools use, and they recycle them, and you hear them in interviews as well. Developing a team whose performance exceeded expectations, making a difficult decision. I'm not saying reuse your essay from MIT for Harvard, although you might, or you reuse your Stanford essay, one of your Stanford essay 3 for Harvard essay 1, although you might. I'm not suggesting that necessarily. What I'm doing is, what if you're only applying to Harvard? Then you're not going to have those essays to reuse, right? I'm saying if this is the first essay that you're writing, I'm trying to help you, because Harvard's question is deliberately vague. It's very wide open. They don't say it has to be in the last 3 years, right? They don't say it has to be personal or it has to be professional. They don't say any of that, and I kind of think that's neat, and I also kind of think that's hard. So this is all stuff that's on my website as well, some brainstorming, some questions to help you get started thinking about what could be a good answer to Essay 1. And finally, as you revise and edit, ask yourself the following questions about Essay 1. Does my leadership or accomplishment story support my goals? First. Second, can I add more details to emphasize results, which are usually quantitative, or impact, which is often qualitative? Quantitative stuff is percents, numbers, made money, saved money. The qualitative stuff's a lot harder, but it's harder to show, but it's still important. I motivated my younger cousin, and now when I go to Harvard Business School, he's going to take over the pizzeria, the original shop over there near Disneyland. My grandparents had a pizza place near Disneyland, so my little cousin's, it's not there anymore. Richie's Pizza, it's gone, by the way. Don't look for it. But anyway, it's fantasy world. My cousin's going to take over when I come to Harvard or when I go to business school, and I'm never going back there because remember I got this big plan to take this thing nationwide. So the local shop that I've been running, I'm passing it on, and so that's a qualitative impact story. I motivated him. I got him to step up. He was missing a few things in there, and I trained him, and he's my successor. Family business. Let's say I'm going to Harvard because I want to do family business, which actually I should be going to Wharton for that maybe. Kellogg has that. It's pretty good. IMD has that in Europe. Family business is a real thing. Harvard has it. I'm not sure it's the best at Harvard, but let's say that I want Harvard for whatever reasons. I want Harvard because it's Harvard, and my cousin's going to take over the business and now he's ready to take it over. That could be a story that I tell or something that I show as an impact. As a result of this success, this went well, that went well, more market share, more profit, more happiness, more health in the family, more health in the business, and best of all, I did motivate this guy who had this great idea. I gave him a piece of the business. He's sticking around, and I think he's going to be great, but even better than me as the next, manager, director, owner, operator of the original shop, which is our signature shop. It's our most important branch or whatever. Anyway, I'm getting into this pizza thing. Sorry, guys, and it's making me hungry. But I'm just trying to give an example to help because I think examples are useful. My general rule is to keep these videos under an hour. Part of that is because YouTube doesn't let me take more than an hour. So I'm going to sign off. I'm going to call this part 1 of the video. And I'll be back with part 2, or you'll see part 2 if you're watching this on YouTube or on my website. Check out part 2 where I start to talk about everything else, which I'll give you a quick preview of part 2. I'll be talking about, I'm in the Harvard column here, I talked about I got halfway through. I got through item 5, essay 1. When we come back, we'll talk about a bunch of important stuff, which is setback essay, which is a stressful story for some people I think it's a fun essay to write, but I think people get confused about it. I'm going to try to help clear up some of that confusion. Letters of recommendation, underutilized by most people, misunderstood by most people. Again, I'm going to try to clear up some of the misunderstanding that I encounter out there in the world of the applicant, the applicant. I'm going to talk about additional information, which, in case you haven't figured it out, this empty triangle means it's the least important. The dark circle is most important. The hollow circle is medium, middle, so important, somewhat important, and the triangle is it's in there, but I don't think it's critical unless I don't recommend you write it. I'll talk about that anyway. Come back and hear that explanation. Let me not confuse you by just stop talking about it until I talk about it. And finally, I'll talk a lot about the interview and ding ding ding, the post-interview reflection, which is new and exciting, and that's why it has its very own special symbol. All right, let me put myself back on the screen for a moment to sign off. One final thing about essay 1. Sorry to jump back to that, but this is one last thing that I want to leave you with. And this isn't new. You see this in all these other consultants that have decent or good write-ups about how to write the Harvard essay 1, mention this, and so I didn't invent this, but this is my take on it. If possible, sum up something you did well by letting us know what you learned. Tell us what you learned, but usually the first thing that you think of is, well, I'll tell you about me. The first thing I think of is not always the best thing. My first idea is usually not my best idea. Sometimes it is if I'm lucky, but I need time because writing is creative. Your brain doesn't work well when it's tired or stressed. A good idea may come to you when you're walking home or driving home. I take the train in Tokyo. You may drive to work or whatever. When you're swimming at the gym or eating pizza or something or talking to your friends. You may come up with a great idea, or when you're dreaming. You may come up with a good idea later. The first thing that you say could be something that I don't think is good. It could be something like, so what did you learn? If you're my client, I'm going to say, okay, great story, I like it. I see how it adds value to your application. I see how it indirectly supports your goal. You come across looking good for these reasons, and these are qualities that I think are important to the admissions office, and so I do like this story, and I'm giving you a thumbs up on it. I'm encouraging you to use it and keep it and make it as good as you can. And then I'll say, just to see if there's anything else to add, what did you learn? Looking back now, this was 2 years ago, this example was whenever, 5 years ago, 1 year ago, 6 months ago. Since that time, what have you learned? What are your takeaways, right? What are your lessons? And someone might say, you know what, I learned that communication is important. I learned that communication is important. That's true, but I don't and then I'm going to say nicely, hopefully, you didn't think communication was important before? Oh no, of course communication's important. I've known that since I was born. Yes, okay. I've known that since I could communicate, since was beyond the first 3 months of my life when I started making noises that meant something. And since that time, I've known communication is important. So that's not a great lesson because you didn't learn that through this example. You knew that your whole life. That's not what I meant. Okay, I learned how to do something. So learning how, my point here is, tell us that you learned how to do something. That's a skill. So tell us about the skill that you learned through this experience, rather than saying, I learned like flat. I learned that ice cream is delicious. I learned how to make my ice cream more delicious. I make ice cream and I learned that this is the best way to make it. That's a skill. Show us the skill that you learned as a takeaway. Don't just talk about the superficial, I learned this subject matters. To me, that's flat. It doesn't move me. I don't even remember that after I stop reading your essay. And if I don't remember that 2 seconds after putting down your essay, and you're my client and I work for you, if I don't remember it, AdComs who have 10,000 applicants, I don't have 10,000 clients. I take very, very few clients. I never have more than 15 clients, full-time clients at a time. Sometimes somebody works with me just a little bit, sometimes somebody works with me a lot, and I average all that out, and I never have more than 15 people total. It may be more than 15 heads, but it's not more than 15 people hours worth of full-time work for myself. So 15 for me on average at any given time. Some finish, I take new ones. 10,000 for D. Leopold. She doesn't read them all, but to get in, you go through her. So she reads the final 1,000, couple thousand at least, because they're taking 900, yeah? If I don't remember it and I have very few clients, I forgot already, you think she'll remember or even care? Or you think actually that this essay is actually going to even get read by her? That's what I do. And again, I try to do it in a nice way when I can, but I'd rather be honest than nice, and sometimes I'm too honest with my clients, but I will tell it to you straight. I will let you know what I think, and if I think it's interesting or believable or memorable or impressive, all of which are necessary for you to get invited to your Harvard interview. So, signing off on part 1. Check out part 2 for all the rest of it. Thanks for your time and attention today, and leave me some comments and feedback in the YouTube section or contact me through my website. And let me know how I can make these videos better. I know I talk too much. That's the Italian thing. It's true. I'm not blaming anybody, but it's my DNA maybe. I talk a lot. I like to talk. I guess this is a video, so that's not terrible. If you didn't want to hear me talk, you would have read this on my website. It's all there. Anyway, I like to talk. I do talk kind of fast. But if you felt that's true, tell me that. Or if you thought something else is true, tell me that. Give me critical feedback or give me positive feedback. It motivates me, but more importantly, it helps you because it'll make me learn how to make these videos better. So it's a give and take. All right, signing off. Thanks again for your time and attention. See ya in the next one. All right, bye-bye.